I just changed to my headphones and want to make sure everyone can hear me. Can people hear me? Great.
Fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, we're going to be running at 6.
Yes.
Okay. Kenmore City Council is now in session. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Here.
Mayor Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Here.
Councilmember O'Kane,
Here.
Councilmember Kugler,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
All present.
All right, we are going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to 42.30.1101 subsection I. And it's dealing with potential litigation, and 42.30.110 B to consider real estate acquisition. And we will be in executive session for 1 hour. So I will see you in exec session.
And for all of our guests still with us, just to reiterate, the council has just recessed into an executive session. They're going to be discussing pending potential litigation along with real estate acquisition. Councilmember Marshall, you are still in the special meeting, and you're going to want to move into the executive session. I'll reissue that link in a second.
Thank you.
Good evening. For some of our guests who are just joining us, I wanted to let you know that the council has recessed into an executive session to discuss pending and potential litigation along with real estate acquisition. They believe they'll be in the executive session for approximately an hour. You're welcome to stick around or tune in around 7 p.m. for the beginning of the regular meeting. Welcome back, Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Councilmember Shrubnik.
Hello. Oh, I've got a funny background here now. My video is excitingly working just fine, even though I had no intervention. So it's gremlins.
Oh. Yeah.
Thanks, Angela, for the leaving those items on your deck.
Oh, no problem. Do we need to stay on for everyone to come back, or are we just going to resume at 7?
You can take a break.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Mayor Baker?
Yeah, why was this link brought me in as a regular person? You had to promote me because it's asking for name and email address.
Because you used the general link and not the panelist link. The panelist link was issued by Zoom, but the general link I issued.
Interesting, because it came in on my email as a link.
Was it in the
Strange.
calendar?
Yeah, it's link 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the generic link. But don't worry, I've got you. I'm watching the holding tank. I'll always promote you.
No, that's fine. It's just I don't like having to fill in email and password, email and name every time.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, we got it worked out, looks like. So we will all be present at 7 o'clock in 3 minutes. We're recording though, right?
Yes, we are.
Good. So I can just bring us back to order. Wonderful. All right. Kenmore City Council is back in a session. There is no action relating to our executive session, and we're going to adjourn from that special session and calling the regular meeting to order. All 7 council members are present. And the next item on the agenda will be the flag salute. And the city manager, I see, has got the flag. So if you'll please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next item is the agenda, approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as written. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation. And the proclamation is Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Whereas for the past several years, the National Coalition for the Homeless and National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness have sponsored National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. And whereas the purpose of the proclamation is to educate the public about the many reasons people are hungry and homeless, including the shortage of affordable housing in Kenmore for very low income residents, and to encourage support for homeless assistance service providers, as well as community service opportunities for students and school service organizations. And whereas no parent should have to send a child to school hungry, no baby should be without the comfort and nourishment needed for mental and physical growth, no elderly person's health should be jeopardized by lack of appropriate foods. And whereas all people should have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes within their communities. And whereas rising costs due to gentrification, lack of publicly owned facilities or affordable housing, and the COVID-19 pandemic have exacerbated both food insecurity and the homelessness crisis. And whereas the city has partnered with many organizations committed to sheltering and providing supportive services, as well as meals and food supplies to people experiencing homelessness, including Camp Unity, Mary's Place, Lake City's Partners, Ending Homelessness, HopeLink, and others. Whereas the City Council recognizes that hunger and homelessness continue to be a serious problem for many individuals and families in Kenmore. And now, therefore, I, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 13 through 21, the 2021 Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, and encourage all residents to recognize that many people do not have adequate food or housing and need support from neighbors, private entities, government entities, and nonprofits. And just to take a second, we're entering into the holiday season now, and there is a tremendous need in our community. If those of you listening, the public in Kenmore, can please make sure, if you can at all do it, to donate food and or money to the service providers that are so necessary in our community. I can't think of a worse time than the holiday season to be without food or shelter. So please do what you can. Next item on our agenda is, yes?
Mayor Baker, we do have our recipient of the
Oh, yes.
proclamation in the audience.
Lauren McGowan. If you would please, would you like to say a couple of words?
Sure. First off, thank you all so much. It is such a pleasure to be your partners in this work to address homelessness and food insecurity in our region. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lauren McGowan. I'm the Associate Vice President of Ending Homelessness and Poverty at United Way of King County. And we are just incredibly grateful for the work that the City of Kenmore has done, continues to do, both in terms of investing in solutions, using your policy prowess to make decisions that really help protect and ensure that families across our region do have access to housing and food. As Mayor Baker said, there's no time more critical than right now to make sure that, as we begin to recover from the pandemic, that we make sure that our families have their basic needs met, and every single man, woman, child, veteran, auntie, and uncle, everyone deserves a safe place to sleep at night and healthy and culturally appropriate food. You all are change makers in making that happen. United Way is grateful to be your partner in that, and really appreciate you all taking the time to just declare that this is an important moment for all of us to step up and join forces together to make sure that our neighbors have access to the resources that they need. We look forward to continuing to partner with you in the months ahead, and just incredibly grateful for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is so important. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the first people of Kenmore, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Coast Salish peoples who thrive in this place, alive and strong. Next item on the agenda is a presentation, North Shore Schools District Capital Facilities Plan.
Thank you. My name is Denise Stiffarm with Pacifica Law Group, and I am representing the North Shore School District this evening with our annual presentation to you of the Capital Facilities Plan update. Joining me is Don Mark, who is the district's Director of Facilities Planning, and there is a board meeting going on right now, so normally Dree Rolfe would also be here, but she's over there at this moment. So I know that you have a busy agenda, so we'll get right into this presentation. I'm just going to share my screen. And I just want to confirm that you can actually see this the slideshow on my screen, on your screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. So as you know, the district comes every year with an update to its capital facilities plan. And this year, the update looks very similar to what you saw a year ago. It's the further implementation of the 2018 bond projects, but also starting to turn to look to the future with the 2022 bond. And just as a general overview, the capital facilities plan follows the requirements of the Growth Management Act. It is updated annually, usually in the spring of each year. So the information in this plan is current as of the spring of 2021. We plan on a 6-year timeline. And for purposes of the components of the plan, it really is looking at the recent trends in student enrollment, what the district projects going forward over the 6-year planning period. It discusses the standard of service, which identifies what the existing capital facilities inventory is, but also what the district may need in the future based upon those growth projections. It identifies a 6-year finance plan to help finance those planned projects. And then if applicable, and it is again this year, it describes the amount and the role of impact fees in school construction. So not surprisingly, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected student enrollment across our region and across our country. The district had, prior to the pandemic, been growing quite considerably from year to year. And you'll see in the pre-pandemic, previous 6-year period, growth had been near 2,400 students. That's down to just over about 1,700 students over the last 6-year period. Looking forward, the district worked with a third-party demographer to really try to get a sense of what things will look like going forward. And that demographer looked at the recent trends in enrollment, looked at current birth rates around the region, and then also looked at the development pipeline. And it's still quite active in the school district with, as of December 2020, when these enrollment projections were performed, over 1,000 new single-family homes in the development pipeline and over 40 multifamily units. And these are in all of the jurisdictions that the district spans. So it's looking district-wide in terms of what future growth will show. And based upon those projections, the demographer found that the district is in fact projected to grow by just over 1,000 students through the 2026-27 school year. So over the next 6 years, growth is projected at all grade levels, and that growth will continue on that upward trend beyond the 6-year planning period. And despite the fact that with remote learning in the last school year and enrollment slightly decreasing by about 1.1%, with the return to in-person enrollment, the district this fall is seeing that those numbers are starting to bump up a little bit slower than we expect, but a nice return to where the district's projections are looking going forward. The other part of the capital facilities plan sorry, I'm going backwards. Moving forward, the district's capital facilities plan looks at its locally defined service standard. And for purposes of school district capital facilities planning, this is essentially the locally adopted educational program. What does the district need in each of those schools to provide its education program? And that helps us determine how much room is in existing school facilities, but also what the district needs going forward for purposes of future planning. And today we know that the district has 20 elementary schools, and that includes the new Ruby Bridges Elementary that opened in the fall of 2020. It also includes the Early Childhood Learning Center, 6 middle schools, and that includes added capacity at Skyview, which recently opened, and then 4 comprehensive high schools and 1 alternative high school. And the new Innovation Lab High School, which opened in the fall of 2020, is slowly ramping up capacity. And by 2022, we'll have capacity for 550 students in that school. By bringing these new projects online, the district is starting to peel back some of those portables that are on the school campuses. And you'll see that, for example, with opening up Ruby Bridges, they've been able to pull back from 101 to 89 portables at the elementary level. They still have portables at the middle school and high school levels, but not near those numbers at the elementary. So it is the intent that as new facilities are planned, those portables will continue to be pulled back, but they still are a part of the capacity solution at this point. The capital facilities plan also includes non-school facilities, so the district's administrative facilities, and then its undeveloped properties, including those that are in the short-term horizon for planning, which includes the Maltby site where Ruby Bridges was recently constructed. It still has room for another school there, which we're calling phase 2. And then undeveloped sites that are in the district's inventory, but for which there is no short-term plan for purposes of using. So they are land banked at this point and will be revisited in future planning. I mentioned earlier that the school district, when it looks at its enrollment and going forward as it's compared to its existing capacity, it identifies whether or not it has growth-related capacity. And growth-related capacity is what triggers the request for school impact fees. And in this capital facilities plan, there is support there for school impact fees as authorized by the Growth Management Act and also your own city code. General background related to those fees, they only apply to new residential development. They are based on growth-related capacity needs, and they can't be used to address existing system deficiencies. So capacity needs that are related to the past are not funded with school impact fees. And they also can't be used to completely fund the cost of growth-related capacity improvements. And that is always why you see, as a component of financing, it's never based just on impact fees, but relies also on that local funding from a school bond, like the 2018 bond and the planned 2022 bond. The school district calculates the school impact fee based upon the Growth Management Act's directive of a proportionate share. So looking at what each new dwelling unit needs for purposes of school capacity. And what drives that determination in large part is the student generation rate. And that is on average, how many students are living in new development units. And this is something that the district updates every year. It looks at a 5-year development window. So a look back at a picture of how many students from new homes built in the district are attending district schools. And so there's a matching of building permits to student addresses. There's a look back for single family housing units and a look back for multifamily housing units. At this point, and something that is revisited every year, is the townhome issue. Right now, townhomes are in the multifamily category. The district continues to expect that at some point, the number of students that are generated from those townhomes will look more like single family homes, and the district will want to request that they be subject to single family fees. But it's not happening yet. They still are looking like multifamily units. And so it's something that will be watched every year. The impact fee formula also importantly provides a credit for two things. One is for any state funding that the district expects to receive towards a capacity project that is growth related. And then the second is the anticipated taxes that a new homeowner will pay towards the school construction fund that funds that capacity. So we want to be sure that there's not a double charge. So that credit addresses that issue. And based upon the analysis in the capital facilities plan, there are several projects that are identified as growth related and included in the school impact fee calculations. And these again are carrying forward what you saw in the 2020 planning. Some of these schools are now constructed and open, but they remain available with new seats for new students. So they have available capacity for growth. That will be revisited every year. But right now in the capital facilities plan, there are projects at all 3 grade levels. New Ruby Bridges Elementary School, the additions at Skyview Middle and Canyon Creek, planning for additional K-8 capacity, and then capacity at the high school level through both the Inglemore High School addition, which has instructional space, and then the new Innovation Lab High School. And based upon those projects and the district's school impact fee calculation, the proposed 2021 impact fees are similar to last year, some slight differences, but the single family fee is at $18,891. That's slightly up from where we were in 2020, and that's largely just a slight bump in student generation rates. And then just a slight decrease in the multifamily fee. It went from about $1,500 to just below $1,400. And that's nearly entirely based on the tax credit. Multifamily units are getting a little bit of a higher tax credit this year, so that brings their fee down just a bit. I will say, just another reminder, the primary difference between these two fees is driven by the number of students that are residing in each dwelling unit type. There just are more students in this school district that are residing in single family units, so that's why you're seeing that higher single family fee. So I'm going to pause. I know I've been talking a lot. Dawn, do you want to add anything into the presentation?
Thank you, Denise. I think you covered the topic with the CFP perfectly. I'm here to help with answering any questions as well.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we will turn it back over to you. We're happy to answer questions. I know that you'll have additional touches in the future on this as well. So we're happy to come back.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Baker.
Are there any questions right now? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Thank you all very much. We appreciate the presentation. Next item on the agenda is public comments. And we want to welcome our community members to the council's meeting. And in this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. All comments must be addressed to the mayor and city council. And please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. And please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. Your time cannot be granted to another and your clock time will not be reset unless there are extenuating circumstances and the presiding officer has expressly allowed it. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance, and please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters and council members must limit the communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded, and I thank you for taking time to express your comments. Will the clerk please call on the first person?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. At this point, we have 4 people wishing to speak. We'd like to hear from them in this order. John Peoples, followed by Carl Michaelman, followed by David Morton and Stacy V. Mr. Peoples?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Let me go ahead and get the timer going. Okay, you may begin.
John Peoples, Kenmore. Good evening, Kenmore City Council. I begin by acknowledging that we live on American land, not stolen from anyone, but rather duly treated for. In this month of November, we celebrate our military veterans and celebrate Thanksgiving when we gather with family and friends to humbly and gratefully give thanks to God for our many American blessings. Special thanks to the memory of men like Watson Squire and Tracy Owen, whose generosity and commitment to the municipal life of Kenmore's residents benefits us all to this day. Along with these blessings, I'll add that I'm just as grateful that the Franks and Gauls are no longer at each other's throats as I am that the Duwamish and Haida people are no longer at theirs, and that slavery is no longer practiced in the Puget Sound region. As for your proposal to institute photo enforcement of our traffic laws anywhere in town, I ask you to stop. Laws passed by humans should be policed by humans with their own 2 eyes. On the other hand, perhaps we should automate our municipal lawmaking. The idea for a farmer's market is an excellent one. I very much look forward to visiting the open air market in June of next year, maskless and without divulging personal medical information. It's not your business, nor the business of any of the other attendees. I am not made safer by such impositions on my neighbors, so please do not try. I still await a moment of silence for those who have been killed by the COVID-19 vaccine. Please do not institute a vaccine mandate or testing mandate in order to fully participate in the municipal life of Kenmore. The vaccine and testing measures, along with several promising therapeutics, combine to keep the virus at bay. The end of the pandemic is nigh, and such measures and the vile indignities that accompany them are completely unnecessary and sometimes fatal. Lastly, thanks for the flag salute and the opportunity to honor our great American Republic. And thanks for the reminder and appeal to people to donate to the needy. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night, Mr. Peoples. Mr. Michaelman, Carl Michaelman. You're muted.
Thank you. Hello, council. How are you all? I guess I'm back in the running, as they would say. My health has been a little bit challenging all year, so you haven't seen me for a while, but I'm getting better. But here's the deal. I got to go back to talk about the lodge and to talk about Joe Marshall. when we had a conversation about what was going on and how he was for the lodge. I did ask for public records. I want to read one thing. That was the Kenmore Reporter. And to show that Joe was lying to us, he said, "We want to protect the legacy of our kids. We don't want to give away our public park, turn it into a private hotel just to enrich the privilege." At Kenmore residents, Joe Marshall. "The land got to remain public. The building must remain dedicated to the park use or nonprofit use." So, and there's a lot more recordings. If I look at the public, I'm making this simple. This is from the Bothell Reporter, January 29th, 2016. Joe, you all took an oath to be in the council, but Joe's oath was a little bit higher. And the reason why Joe's oath was higher is because he made an oath. He's an attorney and he made an oath to the bar. And what happened was he lied. Therefore, I'm asking that Joe Marshall resigns from the council for the simple reason he lied and he did not fulfill his oath from the bar association. The other thing I want you to be aware is I did call Joe to have a conversation with him and he never called me back. So that's what I have to say on that. The other issue is regarding the Christmas trees, the Christmas lighting. Here's a guy that's Jewish. And what's happening is you guys are starting to become un-American. When you're not going to do the Christmas tree lighting, that is un-American. It has nothing to do with regarding the religious thing. It's been commercial. And I heard that Deborah Shrevenick was the one that thought about it. And Deborah, I'm going to be very frank with you. I'm as Jewish as you are. And for you to be to a point where it's offensive that we don't represent Hanukkah and everything else, this thing's a commercial kind of situation. You didn't talk to the public. The public didn't say anything. And quite frankly, I got to say, I'm very disappointed. You guys need to keep the Christmas lights going. This council's going way too far, touchy-feeling how people feel with their religion. I got to tell you, this is ridiculous. And I'm sorry to be so harsh, but enough's enough, where you're getting to a point where it's just not acceptable to say hello to anybody anymore. And offend them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Michaelman.
You're welcome.
David Morton.
Good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. Inhaling toxic gasoline fumes causes health problems and harms every human organ. So it's important to practice and enforce safe handling of gasoline to prevent gasoline poisoning. That's why gasoline-powered vehicles and gas stations have evaporative emissions controls that minimize emissions of gasoline fumes. Kerosene is a higher boiling version of gasoline. Like gasoline, kerosene is toxic, and inhaling kerosene fumes causes health problems. Methods to completely remove kerosene and other volatile organic solvents from the asphalt, cements, or binders used by the asphalt industry were developed by oil refineries in the late 1990s. These solvent-free binders are called performance-grade or PG asphalt cements. EPA worked with asphalt plants to develop methods using PG binders for manufacturing hot mix asphalt used for paving. These methods emit almost no petroleum fumes because undiluted PG binders are used as a raw material in the process as described in AP 42. Methods that use diluted binder called cutback asphalt emit tons of solvent fumes such as kerosene into the air. The intro to AP 42 instructs clean air agencies like Puget Sound Clean Air Agency or PSCAA to ensure that asphalt plants use the same methods and undiluted PG binders used by the plants analyzed to produce the emission factors in AP 42. But PSCAA does not ensure that asphalt plants use undiluted PG binders in their process, instead suggesting that WashDOT periodically tests the binder used by asphalt plants. So on August 11th, 2021, I requested from WashDOT all public records of the testing of binder sampled at the asphalt plant in Kenmore for the last 8 years. On November 5th, 2021, after a thorough search of their records, DOT provided my requested records. Over the past 8 years, only 8 samples of asphalt binder were obtained from the plant and analyzed. The dates of those samplings are shown in the email. PSCAA does not believe that Cadman uses cutback asphalt because DOT periodically tests the binder. WashDOT's records show that the last time that binder from the asphalt plant in Kenmore was sampled and tested was on August, not September 26, 2017. This means that DOT has not tested Cadman's binder for 4 years, during which time Cadman has used about 19 million gallons of untested binder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Stacy V, followed by Elizabeth Mooney. Stacy V.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Good evening, Stacy Valenzuela, Kenmore. As we acknowledge and celebrate the Indigenous peoples this month, my thoughts go to the Duwamish, who are still asking for federal recognition after 155 years. The Duwamish were known to be here in Kenmore area. The city should consider paying rent to the Duwamish. We all know that we are still not seeing the end of this pandemic, and too many low and fixed income residents or those still awaiting unemployment could quickly become homeless when the moratorium expires. We need any projects to have more low and very low affordable housing density, not missing middle, bonus, or market rate housing. It was projected in 2019 that King County will need 244,000 low and very low affordable housing units by 2024. The pandemic has only escalated that. We request action and funding for providing the required testing of the asphalt emission production at the stack, as well as request a health impact assessment evaluation study for Kenmore. Residents of the Kenmore have suffered for years with asthma, bronchitis, COPD, headaches, dizziness, and report several neighbors in emission path developing cancer. The risk of health effects, stroke, cancer, cognitive impairment, pre and low-term babies can be caused by exposure to asphalt fumes, depending on the content of the fumes, the duration of the exposure, the concentration of the exposure, as well as individual sensitivity to the exposure. Some symptoms from those just walking or bicycling on the Burke-Gilman Trail near this plant for a few minutes are complaints of skin irritation, nausea, headaches, fatigue, gritty mouth, and sore throat. We need continuous testing to verify hot mix of diesel fuel, petroleum products, and metal chromium, which are unacceptable as an asphalt release or binder agent, are not being used in the processes. The concern and nuisance of odor have been reported for years. Hydrogen sulfate is a toxic compound that is likely emitted from the hot mix asphalt plant. High levels can be lethal, while lower levels cause these symptoms. There is strong evidence that the particulate matter from the asphalt plants contains benzene, VOCs, and PAHs. We hope that the testing of our air, land, and water prior and after the processes on the MTCA or MATCA sites will be done. We know of 4 areas now that are being developed. 2 were previous landfills. 1, the gas station, and another was a pesticide area. We need to make sure that these land and the soil contained is tested prior, during, and after.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela.
Thank you.
Ms. Mooney. Elizabeth Mooney.
I bet you can see me, but I can't see you, Anastasia.
We can see you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Mooney, and I live in Kenmore. I'm president of PERC, People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore, which has been a part of the Kenmore Clean Air Coalition, which included folks on North Lake Washington's border in Lake Forest Park and Bothell. But I'm here tonight to again support what David Morton was saying and what Stacy Valenzuela said. And just to say our agencies like the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, Department of Ecology, they're not protecting our air, our water, our sediment. We have to do our part here. So David Morton mentioned 2017. You might recall that in 2017, PERC invited the kids, the STEM kids from Tacoma, up with the help of our mentor, Dr. Robin Evans Agnew, to do air monitoring. I want you to know that Dr. Robin Evans Agnew is right now in Glasgow at the COP26 meeting with the Alliance of Nurses for a Healthy Environment. And he is working with us right now to help us attain clean air and environmental justice with regard specifically to our ongoing decades-long injustice of having an antiquated grandfathered asphalt facility built in the 70s in our community without enough education, even for businesses down at Les Schwab today. As it was chugging away, I asked the woman there whether she knew she could call Puget Sound Clean Air Agency to complain, and they don't even know. But thank you, council and staff, for writing to our governor, who let us down about stopping it on hazardous air emission days. Thank you for working with us on that. And I think the solution is at our feet right now. On Thursday, November 11th, you can join the COP26. If you call me, I'll tell you how to see Robin Evans Agnew there. We can get the word out with this powerful opportunity about climate change. And we can do our part and use the Cascadia money and go into 2022, test the emissions from the Cadman Stack from the Burke-Gilman Trail. Thanks to Jerry Paulette for helping us get that request out. I know HB 1057 didn't pass, but we can do our part right now. Please, council, will you help the staff allow us to go into 2022 with more money that we can use at the Burke-Gilman Trail? We can put some testing up right there near the stack and find out what the heck is coming out of that stack. And we'll figure out with data and science whether or not it is or is not dangerous. So let's get the data. We need you to pass that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. Mayor Baker, I see no additional hands raised.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Thank you all very much. We appreciate your taking the time for this opportunity for citizen comments. Before we go further, there's been a lot of concern expressed about the length of time these council meetings are going to. And in order to try to help them move along more efficiently, I've been looking at Robert's rules and I've been talking with Ann McFarland. And we have a couple of rules that we can utilize. One is when staff is giving their presentation and we ask questions, I ask that you keep it to questions, concise questions. At the end of the presentation, when the questions are done, we can go into discussion. And then we can talk about our comments and opinions. And we want to limit those to 3 minutes. So that is what we're proposing from now on in the council meetings. And I know it's going to take some getting used to because we all want to express why we're asking a question, but in reality, we don't necessarily are not concerned with why. We want to know what the question is as concisely as possible. So with that, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Councilmember File.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda, ordinance number 21-0534, relating to animal care and control, amending section 6.05.010 and 6.10.050 of the Kenmore Municipal Code presented by Code Enforcement Officer and no relation, Bridget Baker.
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm bringing to you a couple of housekeeping items by way of an amendment to the Kenmore Chapter 6 Animal Care and Control. In 2010, the city entered into an interlocal with the King County for animal services, and to meet the requirements of the interlocal agreement, the city adopted Title 11 of the King County Code, providing clarity and referencing the King County Board of Appeals as the appropriate appellate body, but it also restricted automatic adoption of future changes. So in 2016, King County amended their Title 11, replacing the King County Board of Appeals with the hearing examiner, giving the hearing examiner jurisdiction to hear animal services related to appeals. During the next few years, the cities utilized the amended interlocals that recognized the hearing examiner as the administrative tribunal for animal cases, and interpreted it as proof that the city was it was the city's intent for the hearing examiner to do so. However, we were recently notified that some recent appeal cases were dismissed without prejudice because of a 2020 Superior Court ruling in a matter arising out of Bellevue. The ruling stated that the Bellevue's animal code still referenced the Board of Appeals, and the hearing examiner had no jurisdiction over Bellevue cases, thus dismissing all of Bellevue's appeals. This amendment to Chapter 6 will readopt the amended King County Title 11, identifying the hearing examiner as the sole tribunal, and reference the correct penalty section, and continue to automatically adopt any future changes to King County Title 11. The penalty section identified had been repealed in 2010, but it was not updated to reference the correct section. So that is what I am proposing.
Questions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 21-0534.
So moved, Councilmember File.
Second, Councilmember Kugler.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember,
Did I hear Councilmember Marshall? You cut out a moment.
yes. Councilmember Marshall,
Okay, yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
2022 pedestrian facilities update presented by City Engineer, Mr. John Vincente.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me share my screen here. All right. Come on. So I'm going to be talking about the pedestrian facility plan. Hold on just a second. I forgot to grab something out of my bag that I need. So tonight, the goal that we have that I want to go through tonight is to review the proposed priority project locations and to also review our criteria establishing which sidewalks should be built when. So the first plan was adopted in 2013. And at the time, we called it the City Sidewalk Program. That 2013 project list consisted of 93 separate projects. They were on 13 of our arterial collector streets and on one local street, which was Arrowhead Drive. And the sidewalk program excluded sidewalks on SR 522. The priorities were assembled based off of the comp plan at the time, and that was goal T7, which established a non-motorized circulation system linking key community destinations. Within that, the 2013 prioritization criteria involved pedestrian safety, connections with community facilities and commercial centers, continuity, which is filling gaps or extending existing sidewalks, connection to transit, proximity to schools, public support, and they're focused on arterials and collectors. You'll notice on a couple of the continuity and the proximity, I have a footnote 1. The scoring points for those two categories were double from the other categories listed. So on the north end of Canmore, before the 2013 plan was created, these were the sidewalks that we had in Canmore. So all of these heavy weighted blue lines you see are the sidewalks that were roughly in place at the time of 2013. With the priority plan, we added several routes. So over here on the, I'll start from west to east. So over here we had the sidewalk on 61st Avenue, which was replacing the existing sidewalk. And then adding sidewalk on 193rd up to the city line at this location. Adding sidewalk on 181st, no specific side was notated. Adding sidewalk again here on 181st from 65th to 67th. Adding sidewalk on both sides of the street on 181st between 68th and 73rd. Then of course, sidewalk on one side of the street on 68th all the way down to 182nd. And then on 68th on the west side, crossing the Sammamish River. And then sidewalk on 73rd on one side of the street from the city line down to 192nd Street. And then on 192nd Street from 73rd to 80th, and along 80th Avenue from City Line down to 522. Since then, we have several sidewalks have been either installed or in the process of being installed. So we have our grant funds to replace sidewalk on 61st from 190th to the City Line. That project's entering design here momentarily. Walkways and waterways, building sidewalk down 68th all the way down to 182nd. And then sidewalks that we added here for the safe routes to schools a few years ago on 202nd. Some sidewalk was installed on 192nd due to development. And then we added some sidewalk here as part of our safe routes to school grant funding that we got. Or I'm sorry, our HSIP funding we got about 5 years ago. And of course, you'll notice we did install sidewalks all along 522 during that period. And this also shows the sidewalks being built as part of the West Sammamish Bridge. On the south side of the city, these were the sidewalks that were in place at the time that the plan was created in 2013. In 2013, the routes that were added were 68th on both sides of the street, and then Juanita Drive all the way down to the city line. We had Arrowhead Drive all the way to, I believe this is 64th, all the way, and then 155th within this gap right here. And then 84th Avenue from Simons down to 145th, and then sidewalk on Simons where it's currently not existing all the way to 68th. So today, we're of course getting sidewalks in on the bridge project and then Juanita all the way down the city line. We added some sidewalk here at 153rd. And then there's just some other hit and miss places where sidewalk was added as part of small projects like Morelands here and a small gap project that we did several years ago. So the updated proposal, 2022 updated project list. As part of this project, we are rebranding it as the Pedestrian Facilities Plan. And the primary reason for that is that sidewalks aren't our only option for providing pedestrian facilities. And so we're trying to make it more inclusive to other possibilities out there. There are some locations where putting a sidewalk may not work, but some other alternative would be appropriate. Since we did the project priority plan in 2013, we completed 27 projects with over $34.5 million in investment. And that number includes the sidewalk work being done for the bridge project, but it does not include SR 522 projects. So with sidewalks since 2013, we'll be doing $34.5 million once we finish walkways and waterways, the bridge, and the 61st project. In 2015, we updated our comp plan, and there was a new goal established for sidewalks, and it was to provide a complete transportation network that serves local and regional circulation and safely accommodates all users. As part of this plan, we're carrying over the 2013 projects that were not completed. Within this plan, we're adding local roads, and within those local roads, we're going to try and close gaps and connecting those local roads with our arterials. We're looking to put sidewalks on both sides of our arterials collectors, except for Juanita. The other side is Park and Golf Course, and there aren't many access points, so we didn't see the need to put sidewalks on that side. And then we're also trying to utilize our existing network and creating connections. The criteria for the 2022 update, pedestrian safety, again, connectivity with community facilities and commercial centers, continuity, filling gaps and extending sidewalks, connection to transit and proximity to schools. Again, I've got the notation 1, which means that we're doubling the points for these. So pedestrian safety, continuity, and proximity to schools are being weighted higher than connectivity to facilities and connections to transit. We're trying to keep the projects to around $1 million a piece. We find that 1 million is manageable size for funding, but also for grant requests. So we're going to keep them at this level. That doesn't mean that we can't combine projects at a later time to maximize funding or opportunities. So here are on the north end, these are the proposed routes. There's quite a lot here. I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can. Over here on the west side of the city in the lower corner, we're looking to add sidewalks from the city line all the way across 182nd down to 181st to connect to our sidewalks on 61st, and then continuing on 81st all the way through our commercial designated area. So I'm calling them out on both sides of the street. Got sidewalk here on 65th between 181st and 522. Continuing with the sidewalk on 61st to replace that. Adding sidewalks on 190th in this location. Adding sidewalks from 61st to the line, but also extending sidewalk all the way along 55th within Lake Forest Park, but adjacent to Kenmore residents. Adding sidewalk on 60th in this location, connecting to existing sidewalk here, bringing connections to 61st. Adding sidewalk from 197th to this location, and then creating a network of sidewalks through the neighborhood here to try and connect these sidewalks that exist in the center of this neighborhood. Adding sidewalk on the other side of 202nd within this area. Adding sidewalk from 64th to 185th and 185th down to 68th to provide a connection here down to the sidewalks being built on 68th. Making connection from where the sidewalks terminate here to 68th as well. Sidewalk here on 182nd Street, connections on both sides of the street. Keeping 73rd sidewalk, 75th sidewalk, one side of the street all the way down to 192nd. Keeping sidewalks on 192nd and on 80th. Adding sidewalk on 203rd. And then proposing sidewalk on 205th within Bothell area, but adjacent to Kenmore residents. Also adding sidewalk down here at Northeast 183rd. And this one primarily is because these folks in this neighborhood go to Bothell High School. So it's a walking distance for them. Oh, I pointed, oh, there we go. And then sidewalk on 175th between where the sidewalk ends and connecting to the new work that we're doing over here on the bridge. I've also highlighted parks in green, schools in orange, and hard to see, but this purple line here is our commercial zoned area within Kenmore. So just to give you an idea of where those locations are. On the south side, we've got the sidewalk here starting on the west side at Arrowhead. We kept the Arrowhead location from the previous, but I extended it all the way to 61st to give a nice continuous connection point to the school. We've kept the sidewalks in Simons, of course, all the way down to the city line, creating a connection trying to connect a connection down through the neighborhood. So we've got one starting here at 75th, connecting to this existing sidewalk, coming across here, down 74th, connecting to 155th, and then going down 75th to connect to 145th. And then 165th to Simons, making a connection there. There's actually a development happening here, which is going to provide some sidewalks. So it makes sense to try and connect all these together. And then 81st coming down and connecting through to here, which also provides connection to Morelands Elementary for the folks living south of here. There's a small gap here that we're adding in for. 155th sidewalks, we're keeping those, but we're extending them all the way to where the sidewalks end or pick up again, getting close to Inglemore High School. Over here by Arrowhead, the 70th Avenue, adding a sidewalk connection here to connect to this little network, and then adding a little bit of sidewalk over here to connect and make this all one big connected network. Also adding sidewalk on 145th on the north side, which is Kirkland, but adjacent to Kenmore residents. And then sidewalk here on 88th Avenue to connect these little sections here. And then a little bit of sidewalk connection here by Inglemore High School. There's a couple of gaps there. I'm just trying to close those gaps. And then a sidewalk connection here on 84th. There's a little gap here between what's on Simons and what was put in by private development. And then 166 connecting Simons to this other section of sidewalk that was built. So public outreach. We're planning to do a focused public outreach in February, which will include the e-news. We're going to enter all this in the quarterly newsletter and then also an all-city mailer. And within that, we will be letting everybody know that we're going to be updating this, providing draft information for their review and for their comment. The next steps from November to January, we'll be looking at preparing cost estimates, refining our project list, trying to keep them around $1 million. We have to create project segmentation, and that means we may have a project that expands several hundred to 1,000 feet, and it will be exceeding $1 million. So we have to break those projects up so they're more manageable, bite-sized chunks. We'll also be looking at possibly maybe adding or removing projects depending upon further evaluation. And then after that, we'll have to prioritize those projects. Once we complete that, then we'll come back to council in February with a draft priority list, cost estimates, and the refined project list. And then in March, April, planning on refining the program based off of comments received from council and from the public, and then hoping to adopt the plan in May of 2022. With that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to council for questions.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Questions on the sidewalk plan? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. Did 61st between 193rd and 197th make the cut for prioritization under this plan? Or if it didn't, is that because it's going to be covered under that specific sidewalk and tree refurbishing? I know there's a lot of, with all the housing, very dense housing to the east for many people there.
So 61st from 190th all the way to 62nd on the east side of the road, those sidewalk replacements are going to be part of the 61st replacement project. So we'll be addressing those with the grant money they received. So it's no longer it's falling off the priority list because it's already being addressed. But the sidewalks south of 190th are staying on the list because we currently don't have funding to address that section of sidewalk. So it will stay on the list and it will get prioritized.
So it's north of 193rd to 197th.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. John, I have two questions. One is there like a separate process for like mapping out and planning multimodal routes? Is that like a separate thing, or do we do that in tandem with the sidewalk plans?
So the multimodal routes are established with our cross sections. So if you recall with the road standards that proposed or presented to council previously, we had shown all of the arterial cross sections, and those cross sections identified where bike lanes would be established. And so those would get built in with those projects. Currently, if we were to build a sidewalk on a project that called for bike lanes, then the bike lanes would be incorporated in with that sidewalk.
Okay, great. And then my second question is, when it comes to prioritization, have we discussed having equity as one of the considerations for prioritizing, like socioeconomic or like demographic information as a consideration? And if not, maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah, that's complicated because we're in the process of developing a DEI policy, and without having something really established, it's hard to address that. That being said, we're going to make every effort to reach out to all different types of communities, much like we did with our ADA transition plan. We tried to communicate with the blind, disabled across the board, and the goal is hopefully to hit everybody in Kenmore and get their feedback. Unfortunately, when it comes to sidewalks, it's to some degree, it's kind of a, the numbers pan out. If it's on a school route and it's got high volumes or it has some accident information, those tend to score higher than those that don't. But again, we're going to try and do as much as we can with the DEI.
Any other questions? Councilmember Srebnick?
Sorry. Yeah, I have three small ones. Can you, so the first question is, can you explain the segments that have both a blue line indicating that there's already sidewalks and they have a dotted line indicating that we need sidewalks? So I was confused by that. In the next iteration, can you green Linwood Park, since it's a park? And along with that, can you confirm that 55th, I couldn't tell from your map, that 55th going down to the park is prioritized? It looked like maybe a part, but if you can confirm that. And then the last question is, did you look at the volume of pedestrian use for some of these routes as a criteria? Not just that it's safe, but that there's also lots of people using it.
Okay. So the blue and the red, so anything that is showing up as blue on the map are sidewalks that have been built or in the process of being built. Either they're under construction or they're under design. The dashed lines, which are in red, are sidewalks that there is no plan yet to build them, meaning that we don't have, either we don't have funding or we haven't started the project or they haven't been considered in the past. So that's the difference between the blue line and the red line. Does that answer your question?
Well, the question was, there are some roads, Simon's is a good example, that has both. Yes. And so that if it has sidewalks, I'm not understanding why we want sidewalks.
Okay, so the blue lines will indicate sidewalk on one side or the other of the street. So on Simon's, if you see a blue and a red, that means there's blue on one side and red on the other.
Okay, got it.
You go. Yeah, and I prioritize putting sidewalks on both sides of the streets on our arterials because of speeds and volumes, and we want to get people safely from point A to point B. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's a sidewalk existing on one side of the street, it's going to score a little bit less if there's already sidewalk on the other. I'm sorry. If there's a sidewalk on one side of the street that we're prioritizing, it's going to score a little bit less if there's sidewalk already on the other side of the street. But we do want to have sidewalks called out on these streets because of the speeds and volumes and the number of people that could potentially be using those sidewalks. Now, 55th, so that is going all the way down our border from the northern end all the way down to 193rd, but it doesn't inch over to Linwood Park. I can add that in there. That's like a very short distance. That's not a problem. And I am showing Linwood Park. It's just so tiny, it's hard to see. On the map, I had a little arrow pointing to Linwood Park, but it was, when
I saw it, it just wasn't labeled green. Yeah.
Oh, well, I thought it was. It's really tiny. So, and then in regards to volumes, we don't really have pedestrian volumes. We can take bike volumes, but to take the pedestrian volumes, we'd have to put a person out there and actually physically count how many people are walking. We don't have counters out there for pedestrians. So we look more at, is it connecting? Is it on a school route or not on a school route? We kind of have to just build the sidewalk and say, go here. And hopefully they go there. But unfortunately, the only way we can collect data is to actually put a body out there and physically count how many people are walking. So then we got a lot of sidewalks.
Deputy Mayor.
Two questions. One, sidewalk on 67th between 181st and 522 I saw was excluded. And I thought that was just an interesting thing to not be there. So I'd like to hear your thinking on that. And also, since we're expanding the definition out to be pedestrian facilities, is there a reason why maybe the Tolt River Trail wasn't included in there? And shouldn't also, since we're looking at in the larger issue, not just sidewalks, but pedestrian facilities, shouldn't things like that are included in our comp plan, like extending the Tolt River Trail across Swamp Creek, be included in this plan?
Okay, so for the first question, 62nd from 181st to 522.
67th. 67th.
Oh, 67th.
Yeah, right where the
you
know the Jimmy John's, all that.
Yeah, you're right. I could put that in there. I kind of wasn't putting it in there because we kind of didn't know what was happening with Lake Point, and if something was going to come in under 522, would it be there? So I was kind of not putting something on there, but I can add 67th. I'm hesitant to build anything without really knowing what's happening on the other side of 522. That was my hesitation, but I can add it and prioritize it. That's not an issue. And then the Tolt. So I kind of was looking at whether we should be doing something with the Tolt and coming across the area. And the main reason why I didn't do that is because that's more trail, and this document isn't a trail document. I was leaving that more towards the parks plan. We tend to hit our sidewalks with that, and trails and parks within the parks plan. I can add it, but it wouldn't score very well with our current priority scoring because there's no accident information. It's not a school walk route. It does get some connectivity, but I mean, it is something that
Kenmore Elementary is served by that trail.
Yeah.
But if we're going to look at it from a larger picture of pedestrian facilities, I don't know.
Yeah, I can add it. I wasn't considering it just because it's.
I was just curious where you're coming from on it. And frankly, I'm not sure if siloing parks versus things like this makes a whole lot of sense when you're talking about a major east-west, facility, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I can look at that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, this is informational only.
Correct.
We are providing feedback and confirming the projects that are on the attached maps or any changes you may want. Discussion, comments. opinions. Councilmember Kugler and then Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, John, for the presentation. I think the prioritization, aside from the equity, I think those guiding values seem right. I would like to request that as we do the public engagement piece, that we create some sort of public education similar to what we did for like walkways and waterways. Definitely some reference page that talks about like maybe costs, different solutions, related costs to sidewalks and stuff, because this is like one of the top things that I think residents request frequently. So just understanding some context, I think, would be really helpful. And with connectivity, I don't know if it specified this, but connectivity to other sidewalks that exist, I think is good, but also to parks and the waterfront would be great, especially to like our waterfront parks from the north to the south. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yeah, I appreciate 55th and that improvement. The Kenmore residents there, of course, right now have to walk in a ditch for a large part of their frontage on the road there. So that's great for the prioritization. And then if you can emphasize that despite the prioritization here, that between 197th and 193rd, that is going to be covered by the existing improvement and related to the improvement of the sidewalks and the tree plan there.
Any other comments or opinions? Councilmember Shrubnik?
I just want to fully support Deputy Mayor Herbig's comment of including, maybe denoting them differently, the trail system. I think that's key. Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Vincente.
Thank you.
Next item, traffic photo enforcement program, presented by the traffic engineer, Tobin Bennett.
Hi, thank you, Council. Let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, I believe we're all looking at the same thing now.
Yep, we are.
Thank you for inviting me to help inform Council's considerations regarding implementation of photo enforcement in the city of Kenmore. I hope I can be informative and insightful while keeping this presentation brief and efficient to allow time for questions and discussion to follow. There's a lot of information to cover, and an in-depth overview of program considerations is covered in the technical memorandum attached to the agenda bill for this item. This presentation, however, will only touch on high-level considerations, and we can reserve future discussions to have deeper coverage of topics important to your consideration. A friend of mine told me it was a mistake to write a 15-page memorandum about cameras and not include a single picture, so I made a point to include at least a few pictures tonight. The recommendation to implement automated photo enforcement in Kenmore predates my tenure with the city. The first formal recommendation for photo enforcement in the city was with the City of Kenmore Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Strategy and Recommendations submitted by the ad hoc committees on pedestrian, bicycle, and safety in 2014. The committee of Kenmore citizens appointed by City Council and assisted by city staff. Sidewalk investment was the committee's #1 priority recommendation, so thank you, John. And automated photo enforcement was the committee's #2 priority recommendation, so I guess we went in the right order tonight. Photo enforcement is a divisive and often unpopular measure, but it is also effective at reducing travel speeds and reducing the risk of crashes and crash injuries. It is also very effective at generating revenue for a city, and it's because of this potential that it invites strong concerns from those who feel drivers are being exploited as a revenue resource, while the photo enforcement program is being disingenuously framed as a safety measure. The safety benefits are real and they are substantial, and it is not possible, nor is it desirable, to implement a photo enforcement program that does not also generate revenue. And the dedication of that revenue and the transparency of program practices must be made unimpeachable to the greatest degree possible in order to withstand the scrutiny a program like this invites. A great deal of thought, research, and planning has gone into framing this proposal, and it's my hope that I can communicate to you how this program can work in the interest of our residents and our road users, how it can be implemented with fairness and equity, and how it can facilitate the city's investment in our roads and transportation safety infrastructure. Photo enforcement is highly regulated, and the restrictions and requirements for photo enforcement in the state of Washington are provided by the RCW. There's a lot in there, but without bothering with you too much detail, I can summarize it by saying that it's completely within our ability to adhere to all of the requirements, and there's still enough flexibility to allow us to create a program that meets Kenmore's specific needs and is in alignment with our goals and values. A few key points that are worth calling attention to. Of the allowed uses that apply to Kenmore, photo enforcement is restricted to use for detecting red light violations and school zone speed violations. This is the biggest limitation, really, and the rest of everything is just specifics, technicalities, and transparency. Automated speed enforcement outside of school zones has been recommended by to the state legislator by WSDOT, but at this time, detecting red light violations and school zone speed violations are what's allowed in Kenmore. The city must prepare an analysis for those locations where photo enforcement will be located. What needs to be included in the analysis isn't explicitly stated in the RCW, but what we've been working on is an analysis of speed data and crash data and risk to pedestrians and estimations of the safety benefit we'd be able to achieve at each location. Annual reporting on the number of notices of infraction issued and the number of crashes in enforcement zones. Our photo enforcement website will be a nexus for all information about the city's enforcement program, and that's where this information will live. And in addition to statistics about the most recent reporting year, we'll be able to show historical statistics as well, and even comparisons to school zones and signalized intersections without photo enforcement. The signing approaching automated photo enforcement areas must be clear, and it must be installed at least 30 days before enforcement is active. We'll do one better and put orange flags on the signs when they're new too. In fact, there's a lot we're proposing to do that's above and beyond the level of advanced noticing required by the RCW. Reducing the mean speed of travel on a roadway is directly effective at reducing the risk of crashes occurring and reducing the risk of injury in crashes that do occur. When cars are traveling at slower speeds, they have more time to react to a situation, and they have more time to bring their vehicles to a stop or reduce their speed substantially before crash does occur. Crashes that happen at lower speeds are less likely to result in injury and death. All road users benefit from this reduction in crash risk and reduction in crash severity, but pedestrians are most likely to suffer fatal injury when involved in a crash, and so they're the ones who reap the most dramatic benefits from crash risk and crash severity reduction. To put this in terms of speeds we're actually seeing right now on Juanita Drive in the Arrowhead school zone, a pedestrian will suffer a fatal injury in roughly 2 out of 3 crashes when vehicles are traveling at 35 miles per hour, but a pedestrian will suffer fatal injury in roughly 1 out of 10 crashes when the vehicle is traveling 20 miles per hour. Right now, the average speed during school zone active hours on Juanita Drive is 37 miles per hour. Red light violations are associated with some of the most severe intersection crashes. In Kenmore, at 61st Avenue and Bothell Way, there's an added concern that the red light violations, which are occurring most frequently, are left turns during the protected pedestrian phase on the north leg. A pedestrian conflict study we performed here in 2019 showed that during peak volume hours, roughly 80% of pedestrians were experiencing a conflict due to left turners failing to stop at the red light. A pedestrian conflict in this case means that pedestrian had to alter their path to avoid the vehicle by speeding up, for example, or by stepping backwards. In traffic safety terms, this is the equivalent of a pedestrian fender bender. And any escalation from a conflict to an actual crash would almost certainly result in injury and possibly severe or fatal injury. If you saw an intersection where 80% of the vehicles were having fender benders, the community would move mountains to fix the problem before injury or fatality occurred. This is no different, and we're fortunate that no injury has occurred at this location yet. So how effective is photo enforcement at reducing the frequency of speeding violations and red light violations? In the case of both types of enforcement, it's typical to see about a 40% reduction in violations during the first year, and an additional 40% reduction of the remaining violations over the long term, for a total of 64% reduction in violations over the long term. This varies a great deal from location to location, and some environments may be more or less suitable for photo enforcement. In addition to the recommendation by the Ad Hoc Citizen Committee in 2014, photo enforcement was recommended by the Financial Sustainability Task Force. I like to think of this as a dramatic and heroic story in 3 parts. The task force recommends photo enforcement. brilliant and bold plan to improve safety while balancing the books, a chance to flutter two hearts with one fetching glance. Council adopts the Photo Enforcement Sustainability Plan, a bastion of fiscal responsibility built as strong as the pyramids and with a watchmaker's finesse. And among its finest features is the provision for implementing photo enforcement in Kenmore. Finally, at the climactic resolution of this saga, revenue from photo enforcement is included in the 2021-2022 biennium budget, with $500,000 planned for the second half of 2022 and an estimated $1.7 million planned for future years. What I would like to think right now is that we find ourselves maybe in the epilogue or even in the making of on a special features disc where we suss out the details and pave the way for the happy ever after. The funding from photo enforcement from the very start and through the entire story has been earmarked for pavement preservation and traffic safety improvement. Not only is this important in order to provide a consistent and reliable source of funding for these important services, but dedicating the funding to these needs strengthens the standing of the program as one that supports safety and continued operation of our roadway network. An additional important feature of this specific funding mechanism is that folks who drive through photo enforcement zones, whether they come from within Kenmore or from without, are all contributing to the wear and tear on our pavement. And the folks who speed in our school zones and run our red lights, whether they come from within Kenmore or without, are all contributing to the increased risk of crashes on our roads. Following that paradigm, photo enforcement is a way to share the burden of our traffic safety and pavement investment with all the road users who contribute to the continued need for that investment. It's not enough to have a good program. Abundant communication and transparency are needed in order to earn and keep the trust of Kenmore residents. Grassroots political action by residents reaching out to their council or legislator representation or by voter initiative has resulted in the cancellation of many photo enforcement programs regionally and nationally. There's evidence, however, that Kenmore is starting out in a good place from the standpoint of public buy-in. Contributions to the city's budget simulation tool during the process of developing the financial sustainability plan indicated that photo enforcement was the most preferred revenue enhancement strategy by a substantial margin. Maintaining that buy-in, however, will be more difficult once cameras are active and fines are in the mail. And to maintain the high esteem of our residents, we must create a program that makes them feel served, not exploited. In order to do that, I think we have to provide easy, accessible answers to a few simple questions. Are people able to find out where the money is going? This is information we can break down on our website. The RCW requires that contractors operating the traffic safety cameras be paid only a fixed fee. Contractors will never be paid based on how many violations are detected. The city retains 100% of the fine amount collected by photo enforcement, so it's on us to show it's being spent well. Is the money being spent on things that are important to our residents? There will be an increased cost of court services, but the rest of it can be dedicated to pavement preservation and traffic safety programs and projects. These are highly requested services, and dedicating the revenue to these projects and programs will help show that this program is a service to our residents. Is anyone being hurt by these cameras? Social and economic equity is an important consideration in any conversation about fines and law enforcement. It's important that we're able to show that the city's values are being upheld and that the system is not doing harm to vulnerable populations. Incorrect and incomplete information is common in discourse regarding photo enforcement. A common concern is that, for example, red light cameras cause crashes rather than prevent them. There's a grain of truth in that. If automated red light enforcement is implemented at inappropriate locations, it's possible they could do more harm than good. Our website will be a big part of getting out ahead of misinformation and providing context and answers to concerns residents may have. Is the system just out to get you, or is it only ticketing people who are engaging in high-risk behavior? Enforcement is a high-impact way to change people's behavior, and care should be taken to right-size the response and administer enforcement in ways that change behavior, not only in ways that generate revenue. The revenue generated by photo enforcement is substantial, but a program that applies enforcement judiciously over a long life provides more funding and more safety to the city than one that appears exploitative and gets shut down after raising the ire of the general public. An incredibly important way to solicit buy-in is to build a system that feels fair. In many cases, folks who receive a fine from photo enforcement program feel like the system was created to exploit them unfairly. This may in some cases be true, but in Kenmore, we should aim to alleviate all concerns that our photo enforcement is a gotcha system out to create violations in order to find them. We have so many tools to facilitate driver awareness at our disposal. Advanced warning signs, high visibility flags to draw attention to new conditions, school flashers to alert drivers when school zone speeds and photo enforcement are active, and speed feedback signs to help draw drivers' attention to their own speeds before entering the enforcement zone. All these measures reduce violations and improve safety, and the threat of photo enforcement is the muscle that makes them work. Regarding an entirely different dimension of fairness, we are all equal in the eyes of the traffic camera. There is a great deal of conversation going on around traffic stops right now, and many agree that fewer traffic stops would be better. Photo enforcement allows for enforcement benefit to continue while removing the need for a traffic stop in order to issue the notice of infraction. Violations detected by photo enforcement are still reviewed by a police officer before the notice of infraction is issued, but the review is done without any identifying information, which is another requirement of the RCW. This allows for consistent, rules-based enforcement, which can remove doubt about fair treatment for drivers who receive a notice of infraction. Social and economic equity are important considerations in implementing a program with as much potential for impact as photo enforcement has. There are many questions which need to be kept in mind. We need to ask about what sort of impact we're going to have on folks who are burdened with a fine but may not be financially secure. This is an issue we need to make sure is addressed in our fine schedule. Unpaid fines can cascade into insurmountable financial burdens for individuals with a high degree of economic insecurity. Fortunately, the nature of photo enforcement leaves most of the determination of non-payment processes in the hands of the city, so we can make sure our values are reflected in how we approach this issue. Even if the fine does not result in financial catastrophe for an individual, the impact of the fine is greater for individuals belonging to lower income households. When considering photo enforcement as a revenue source, we want to be sure that we are not drawing disproportionately on groups which will feel a greater impact. Statistically, drivers most likely to be ticketed by photo enforcement, however, statistics show that those drivers belong to higher income households, and that lower income households are less likely or are likely to be underrepresented in fines issued by photo enforcement. Thanks for bearing with me for that tedious and stuffy high concept overview of what considerations might be for a photo enforcement program in Kenmore. If you'll indulge me just a moment longer, I'd like to review what a timeline for implementing photo enforcement could look like. This is us right here discussing photo enforcement. This is not a deliberation that can be had in one night, so we might be looking at tentatively having a public hearing and council vote in January. At that time, we would be engaging in an RFP process to identify a contractor to help manage photo enforcement equipment. Council award for photo enforcement contract would take place in March, and the installation of advanced warning signs would happen as soon afterwards as possible. Once the cameras are active, we're proposing a very lengthy warning period where folks who are found to have committed a violation receive a warning in the mail rather than a notice of infraction. During the summer, actual ticketing would begin for the red light camera locations. And when the school semester begins in fall 2022, ticketing for school zone speeding would begin. At that point, the photo enforcement program would be in full effect. Each step of this process will be accompanied by abundant public outreach. I've included some details of the step-by-step public outreach in the accompanying memorandum. And that's everything. So I can turn it over now to council for questions.
Questions? Councilmember Kugler, then Councilmember Flau.
Tobin, thank you for that very detailed overview. I just have a question about the implementation timing in July of 2022. What was kind of the thought behind that when we know that there's a break from school during the summer? Like, my worry is we're sort of prepping people and then that would go dark for, several months.
Right. So it's important to me that we have a warning period that overlaps with some of the school year. So with the timeline that I outlined, there would be at least 2 months of time when school commute traffic would be receiving warnings instead of violations. And then, of course, there's the summer break, and we would have the real program starting when they come back. There would be a gap, but we'd be doing messaging during that gap. We would also be starting the photo enforcement, the red lights during the summer. So it would be a process that we're kind of keeping in the public eye during that break.
Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to pass as Councilmember Kugler asked the question I was going to ask. So thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Thanks. I have two questions. Traffic camera, was the school zone around Inglemore High School, which is a relatively new school zone, was that considered in the analysis? So that's the first question. And the second question came from someone else, actually. It's if there's a camera placed at Bothell Way and 61st, can you confirm that we, as opposed to we in the state, get the revenue?
Yes, I'll go backwards because that's the easiest thing. Okay. Yes, we do get the revenue at 522, just like Lake Forest Park gets the revenue from their traffic safety camera on 522 as well. Regarding the IHS school zone, I do have numbers on that one. I would not recommend it for photo enforcement because it is so new. I feel like that would be contributing to the gotcha system, putting in a school zone only to start photo enforcing it. It may be a good candidate for photo enforcement in the future if we start with different locations and they become successful and we want to apply that elsewhere in the city. At that time, Simons may be a good candidate for a photo enforcement location.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
A couple of questions. So you're proposing 2 tiers of fines for school zone speeding. One for 6 miles per hour above school zone speed, another for going 6 miles per hour faster than the underlying regulatory speed. So in some cases that could lead to a first tier starting at 26 miles per hour and the second tier not starting until 41 miles an hour. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
As the speed limits are right now, that is correct. Now, I know another topic that we have a discussion coming up on is reduction of speed limits. And of course, all of this is open to changing them around. But yes, if we implemented that on Juanita, for example, that would be where that second tier starts.
I guess my question then is why base it on the regulatory speed instead of just basing it directly on the school zone speed, because that's the speed that's being enforced at the time. Should it really matter that the underlying speed outside of school zones is 15 miles an hour higher or not? Should we just, kick in the second tier at, 11 miles an hour over the school zone speed or 15 or 16 miles an hour over the school zone speed instead of having it tied to what the underlying speed is outside of school hours?
That is absolutely the direction that we could go. The reason I recommended basing it off of the regulatory speed is because the regulatory speed represents the traffic environment that we've created there. A place with a 35 mile per hour traffic environment might have a lot fewer people walking, for example, in the road. It might have sidewalks. There might be less risk at a certain speed on an arterial with a 35 mile per hour speed than if people were going, say, 41 miles per hour on a local road.
Right. Okay. And then the other question I had, and I'm curious because, we know that, Lake Forest Park has had their system set up for a while and, we've all driven through Lake Forest Park and, seen their cameras. Do we have any idea what similar cities, like what percentage of the revenue that similar cities to us are receiving from their own residents versus people commuting through the city? Do we have any idea what that looks like?
It's going to vary a lot depending on what sort of classification of the road we're installing these on. A camera on, for example, a Morelands school zone on 155th might capture a lot more local traffic than, say, a camera on one of our arterials like 73rd or Juanita. So that's something that we could, it's difficult to tease that data out. We could look into what resources we have to estimate it. I can tell you conceptually, it will skew, towards a regional mix of traffic on arterials and more local traffic, and also more traffic representative of local land use when you go to the smaller classification roads.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, thanks. And good job, Tobin, on this presentation. And I think you mentioned this, but I just want to make sure the council knows that think of this discussion in several parts. Part one is tonight. And then part two, I believe, is going to be on December 6th. Is that correct? Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah. So Tobin can provide even more detailed information on December 6th, especially given the type of questions that you have tonight and between now and December 6th. So tonight's not your only night to ask questions or to receive all the information. More information will be provided on December 6th with a chance to ask more questions. And then the thought is to have a public hearing on this in January where you can ask even more questions and receive even more information. So think of it as kind of at least a minimum of 3 parts. Part one tonight, part two on December 6th, and part three would be the public hearing in January.
Any other questions? So I guess I have one. I keep hearing from staff that this is a revenue generator. And I'm wondering, do you have any hard evidence of problems at 61st and 522 eastbound turning north? Is there any police data, either accidents or running red lights or anything?
Yes, we actually have pretty dramatic evidence at that intersection, and that's a study that I can definitely share with you.
From the police, right?
Sorry?
From the police.
It was conducted by engineering, but we worked with the police to follow up with enforcement. We found that the red light running stopped completely when we had conspicuous enforcement there, but then started immediately after conspicuous enforcement was absent. So because we cannot station a police officer there 24 hours a day, photo enforcement would be a way to have conspicuous enforcement at that intersection, which we feel would resolve the issue almost completely.
Okay, yet we don't really have any evidence. And so that's why I'm asking for hard evidence. If there is any hard evidence that there is a problem at that intersection.
Yes, there is. Our study demonstrated that during peak hours, we had 80% of pedestrians experienced a conflict, which is a close call. Basically, they had to move out of the way of a car. It was more dramatic than I've seen that sort of study happen at other intersections. A baseline conflict rate for pedestrians is between 0 and 5% elsewhere in the city. Here we found it at 80%. 80% of pedestrians were having to avoid vehicles while crossing the crosswalk during a protected pedestrian phase.
Okay, so then they actually was the green walk signal.
Yes, they had the walk signal. Yes.
They weren't anticipating.
Left turn traffic at that intersection begins, we're talking about eastbound to northbound left turns, starts with the green arrow. During pre-pandemic traffic conditions, there's extensive queuing at that intersection. When the green arrow turns to a red arrow, cars would continue to travel through the intersection without stopping until they, I guess, at least one person got uncomfortable enough to stop. But we would see, multiple vehicles continuing on through the red light, entering the intersection during the red light, one after another, causing conflicts with the crossing pedestrians who would walk when they got the signal, not expecting to have to look out for left turners.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, this is informational only, like the city manager said. We'll have it again in December and a public hearing in January. Discussion or comments? Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, so there's a few weeks between now and December 6th. So if you think of any questions or if you hear anything from Kenmore residents, send those questions our way and we'll see if we can answer them at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the farmers market proposal presented by the Assistant City Manager, Nancy Owsley, and the event Assistant Nicole Suarez, and volunteer event supervisor Stephanie Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tobin, that was a great presentation and discussion. I don't know if we'll be able to match the flourish of your presentation, but we have some pretty interesting and exciting information to share with you tonight. And we're hoping to get your questions. Let us know what you need to hear from us when we come back in December about the possibility of doing a trial run this summer between June and August for a farmer's market in downtown Kenmore. As the mayor mentioned, our events and volunteer supervisor Stephanie Brown and events assistant Nicole Suarez have been working on learning a lot about farmers markets in the area, and they've been talking to people who manage markets. They've researched pretty closely when surrounding cities, what day of the week the market is operating in different cities, and have come up with a time that I think would work pretty well and wouldn't conflict with other neighboring markets. And again, we're not looking for a decision tonight about this, 1-year trial basis for a summer market in 2022, but we are very interested in your questions and what kinds of things you would like us to bring back when we discuss this again in December. Stephanie Brown, unfortunately, is not able to join us tonight, but Nicole Suarez is teed up to provide this information to you and to get your questions and feedback. And again, importantly, no decisions are being requested tonight, but we are eager to hear what kind of information you'd like to hear more of when we come back in December. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Nicole.
Hello all. Hi, Council. Thanks for having us here this evening and hearing about the proposed farmers market. Again, as Nancy shared, this is a proposal just for the year of 2022 as a temporary trial basis to see how this would go over with our city. We would add this to our event lineup. And tonight I want to share some of the benefits, logistics, locations, financials of the market. So as we know, as many have, hopefully a lot of you have been to a farmer's market, it really is something that's really beneficial for the city in engaging community members. Not only does it provide fresh produce and other food options within walking distance, it supports local farmers and vendors from all backgrounds and diversities. In addition to residents, all residents, I want to really emphasize that we would also have a program that would allow lower income individuals to shop at the market. There's partnerships that can be done for partnering with EBT cards and also providing for low-income seniors and using WIC benefits as well. So that will be explored too. Just want to touch on that. This would also be a direct benefit for our council and our city departments. There are benefits from running a city-run farmers market. Such other cities that do this, to name a few, are Renton, Issaquah, Auburn, and the city of Kirkland. With that, we would have a direct platform to engage with the community on various programs, initiatives, that are happening within our own city and within the council. So we would have weekly tables at our city booth every week to provide a chance for engagement and education. Specifically with this farmers market, we'd start out at a minimum of 20 farmers, 20 food vendors, and this would be specifically concentrated on food vendors. This would not be a trinket or craft fair type market. This would just be specifically for fruits, vegetables, flower growers. We would also have other food processors, so bakers, bread makers, dairy vendors, meat and seafood vendors, and jam vendors, to name a few. So any type of consumables would be the focus of this market. We know that there are opportunities and interest in some of our smaller businesses within the city of Kenmore who want to be able to potentially sell their wares. And so we're looking at also exploring potentially a opportunity for a rotating artisan to join the food vendors once a week. And that would be limited to potentially 1 or 2 artisans if that could be an opportunity with this, but definitely starting off as a food focused market. All right, so we definitely, I'll touch on the location shortly, but we know that this would be impactful on businesses within the downtown cores where we're proposing this market to be. So definitely this would bring in a lot of residents, community members, and potentially outside community members as well, who would come in to the downtown core area of Kenmore, who might not have come at all before for any other reason other than the market. And when they're there, they would potentially frequent and patronize other businesses that are in that downtown core area. I'll touch on the location, but we know that some of the entrances and accesses may be blocked during the market. However, the customers would be encouraged to walk or to bike to the market during those market hours. In addition, parking will be available at City Hall, in the garage, and in the back parking lot during market hours. It would be closed for employees, and it would just be open for market goers during that time. The city of Renton does that, and it works really well. And their market is also across the street from their City Hall and in a big open area, similar to how ours would be. So this would be beneficial. And then again, if we allowed local artisans to sell their wares as well, that would be beneficial to our local small businesses. All right, this would not be a single hand, although we're proposing this to be through staff support, to run through staff. We would also be able to partner with several resources that we have found of programs, other market managers, and there's a very large organization called the Washington State Farmers Market Association, who runs a boot camp in February for new markets, new market managers. There's connections and meetings with other market managers. And so they have information on all aspects of running a farmer's market. In addition, we proposed funds to hire a consultant for our starting year. So someone who would help us connect with vendors is the biggest one. Someone who has already those connections and who's already ran markets. We have a good contact already, a top contender for this role. And so who came highly recommended to us from the Washington State Farmers Market Association, who currently runs the Edmonds Farmers Market and who's been involved in the Lake Forest Park Farmers Market as well. We would also be interested in utilizing volunteers, which is a big aspect of our events already. A lot of our events can only be run with the help of volunteers. So this would be another key lift in getting this farmers market running and operating each week. We would propose to create a basically like a Friends of the Market committee coalition, where there would be 4 to 6 individuals within the community who could be part of the planning and part of the promoting the market and getting the word out for within the city for us, and also would be available market day and help us on market day. So our location we're proposing is right in the heart of downtown Kenmore, right along 181st. So we would propose closing off 181st between 67th and 68th. These pictures are from the 2018 Why I Love Kenmore block party event that used to be a city event. And the whole 185th was closed off, and the town square was also utilized too, is what we would like to propose in this for this location as well. I'd like to show one more example. Sorry, I wanted to show an example real quick here. I'm not going to do that. It wasn't involved in the slide, so I'm not going to add it in now. But I just wanted to mention that the city of Magnolia, which is a great market, they do one right in their downtown court as well, and they close off the street and between 2 other perpendicular streets. And the vendors are set up. We'd like to propose to set this up where the vendors are in the middle of 181st, and we can create kind of a circular movement, one directional movement around the vendors. All right, so some of our proposed sources for this revenues coming in to make this possible to run this market would be vendor booth fees would be charged. Vendor booth fees are typically about $40 per vendor. So with 20 vendors, we would bring in 11,200. This would also, a revenue source for this market would be through sponsors. We can sell sponsor booths. We would limit the sponsor booths though to 1 per market, so that it wouldn't be a business market. It would be still the concentration on the farmers market and food vendors. However, with the benefit of helping business partnership as well in addition to our sponsorship program. We're looking at some different funding sources for this, and Nancy can touch on that a little bit kind of towards the end of the presentation as well. So we basically looked at all the costs associated with what this would entail to run a market, specifically the first year, and then forecasting for a couple of years out as well. So this would have to be increasing staff to be able to make this happen, and also hiring a seasonal farmers market intern during the duration of the farmers market months. And to really specify, I want to make sure we're clear on the days would be, the timing would be specifically in the summer months of June through August, that we'd like to propose this on Wednesdays, in the evenings on Wednesdays from 3 to 7 p.m. I want to make sure we're clear on the day we landed on that day, because this did not conflict with other markets in the area. Lake Forest Park is a large market that runs, that's close to us, neighboring city, that runs on Sundays. So we would not be competing with them. The city of Kirkland runs a great farmers market on Friday afternoons in Juanita Beach. We would not be competing with them. And so in the city of Bothell no longer runs a farmers market. Wednesday was also a great day because it doesn't conflict with our summer Thursday concerts that are a great tradition, and we don't want to pull from that crowd too. So we're proposing Wednesday afternoons from 3 to 7. Going back to our uses, we would also need to have Public Works be there, just one Public Works staff member. Police would only need to be there on the first day of the market. As we are closing off 181st, we would propose having 1 police officer there on the first day at the intersection of 68th and 181st for safety. With this, we also have, there are King County permitting fees, and we would definitely set aside funds for advertising promotion, heavily more on the first year. There would be additional Farmers Market Association, Washington State Farmers Market Association dues. And we would have a farmers market consultant startup fee as well as a King County new market fee. And then we budgeted funds for startup supplies, furnishings, equipment fees as well. So thank you for, I'm going to stop this sharing this. So in summary, as the city of Kenmore grows, it is important that we offer amenities for our residents and community. A farmers market would be a wonderful asset within Kenmore. We are in a prime position to offer this amenity to the community. Based on the proposed location, the farmers market would help to continue to create a vibrant downtown area. This proposal strongly meets 6 of the council's goals as listed on the agenda bill. We are proposing this farmers market for a temporary trial basis for 2022.
And definitely, normally a program like this would be discussed during budget deliberations, but we wanted to bring the possibility of a trial run for this summer of 2022 at this time of the year, because as Nicole mentioned, there's a lot of startup activities that are needed, as well as some of the boot camp that she mentioned that's early in the calendar year. But definitely we're not asking for a decision or direction tonight. We just want to hear what your questions are and what we can look into between now and December when we come back.
Questions? Deputy Mayor.
Would there be any like ready to eat food there, food trucks, anything like that for folks while they're browsing?
Yes, we would. We would not do a heavily concentration of prepared food, potentially 1 or 2 food making stalls. But people come to the market with only a certain amount of money with them, and we want those dollars to be spent and to go towards the farmers and specifically to the growers. So it would be, but limited.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Kugler.
I have a question about the proposed budgeting or the funding, and that is with the increase of event staff from half-time to full-time, are you estimating that it'll require like 20 hours a week for a staff member to focus on this event?
Yes, that's how the proposal is written, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilmember Shrubnik.
How do we assure that we'll have at least 20, and what happens if we don't?
That great question. That's why we hire a farmers market consultant who knows these farmers, who's assured us that she has people waiting on a wait list and can kind of make those contacts with us.
Any other questions? We approached this subject a number of years ago when it was $30,000 and decided it was too expensive. We're now bringing this forward, wanting to do it, and it's $70,000 a year. You mentioned this briefly. Don't you think we should bring this back during budget time and work it into our biennial budget instead of trying to squeeze it in with such little time to prepare for the first year? That was a question.
It was a good question, and you know, as you can see, Stephanie and Nicole have been looking into this for some period of time. By no means are those numbers, you know, any kind of final determination, and so that's a good takeaway for us about, okay, let's take another look at these numbers before we come back in December.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? No, questions.
I think Rob may want
Manager,
to.
yeah, Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, Mayor, you bring up a good question about waiting for the budget process versus doing it now. It's really up to you as a council. It's just that if you wanted to give it a trial period or a pilot type of a try this summer, then you certainly can, and you can use some one-time monies for that. Or you can say, no, we would want to have it. We do want to wait until the budget process and have it, compete with all the other demands that will be coming forward in the budget process. So it's really just a policy decision on your part. You can use some one-time money to do a pilot this summer, or you can say, hey, no, let's wait till the budget deliberation process next year.
Definitely.
Councilmember O'Kane, question?
It was more of a comment, but
Okay.
later.
We'll come back to the comments here after we get through with the questions. Yes.
My understanding, I think we're going to come back on December 13th, if I'm not mistaken. And we actually do need a decision from you on December 13th because they need so much time and prep to get this thing going. And mid-December is kind of the limit on go, no go decision.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Councilmember O'Kane.
Thank you. I just really appreciate the work that you've put into this. And my comment is, I think this summer is right. It's time for more community. We've been so hurt by separation throughout COVID that the timing is right. Gosh, I'm excited for this. So I think we can make it work with the budget. And I love the idea of a test run. So thank you. Really thorough, great presentation. I'm not going to keep us here too long, but I got more in my heart. So thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor, if I could just add another comment. Nicole mentioned Magnolia, which is, of course, a Seattle neighborhood. Pandemic times, this past summer, for sure, I found myself, like running over to the post office in Magnolia, and right in this one block area, right where the post office is, there was a farmer's market every Thursday or something like that. And it worked very, very well. You could still access businesses, and I noticed that people were at sidewalk tables, having coffee at a local business, and it was it seemed to work very well. You can sometimes we're used to larger farmers markets, but it seemed like that scale worked well and was well supported by the community. There's one on Queen Anne as well, kind of similar size.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Councilmember O'Kane for everything she said. Thanks.
Any other comments? Great. Thank you all very much.
There's one more.
Yeah. I'm not saying, Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this. I think it's a great idea and trial run. I think we sort of have a little bit of a food desert in Kenmore when it comes to like locally grown food, especially like organic food, and would be a great way to activate the downtown, which I think residents want, and get people outside and together. So I think it's a great use of potentially our strategic opportunities fund to do a trial run, but I look forward to discussing it more in December.
All right. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
Just want to say I agree with our with my colleagues.
Great.
Oh, we look forward to seeing you again in December.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda, staff report. Mr. City Manager.
Just happy Veterans Day this Thursday. City Hall will be closed that day. I believe there might be some residents doing a flag raising ceremony on the 10th. I don't have a lot of details on it, but I'm hearing that might be happening. So that's all I have.
Yes, I'm hearing the same thing. Okay, council comments and reports. Councilmember O'Kane.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, I wanted to urge again the public to try to make time out of your schedule for the Planning Commission listening session, which I think is next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, next Wednesday, on the subject of single family zoning and missing middle, and really very important questions about how much density is right for Kenmore and how much infrastructure and basic public safety do we need to go along with that density. So please take a look at that and attend if you can.
All right. Councilmember Kugler.
I just want to thank the staff for their research and presentations tonight, and thank us all for being concise and focused on today's agenda. Thank you.
Councilmember Srebnick.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilmember Kugler. Great meeting and facilitation and discipline, and it really worked. We got a lot done, and it was great. And I believe the listening session or the forum is on Tuesday, the 16th at 6. And I also would urge folks to participate. That would be awesome. Thank you. Nothing else.
Deputy Mayor.
I got an email last week from the North Shore Urban Human Services Alliance letting us know that they do human services awards every at their annual meeting every December. And they're letting us know that we were nominated for the work. The city of Kenmore was nominated for the work that we've done around tenant protections and mobile home park preservation. So it's not just over the last year, but you know, our work in the last few years. And we got nominated. We're not getting an award from them, but we were nominated. They wanted to let us know. And the mayor and I are going to be meeting with a representative from Nusha tomorrow, actually to receive a certificate from them and get a picture taken. But it's nice to have been nominated, I have to say. I think we've done a lot of good work. So I just wanted to pass that on so y'all knew what was happening. Other than that, nothing to add.
And I really don't have much to add this time. National League of Cities is meeting next week. I know that I'm going to it and Councilmember File is going to it. And since Councilmember File is going to be there, I asked her to be the voting representative at the business meeting. We cast one vote for new officers and board members. And if you have an opportunity, a chance to come by and see what NLC is about, please do. But other than that, if there's no more new business to come in front of us, thank you, folks. A really good meeting tonight. And just to be on the safe side, it's only a few minutes past 9. And we are adjourned. Thanks.